Hello and welcome. We continue our exploration of King Solomon's guidance in the Book of Proverbs. In the following verse, Solomon teaches us how to speak properly and how crucial it is to be mindful of the words that come out of our mouths. A person who pays attention to the way they speak, who doesn't just let words pour out as they come to mind, but instead trains themselves to control their speech, is someone who understands the power of words. It's been said, before a word is spoken, you control it, but once it's spoken, it controls you, with all the consequences that may follow. Here, King Solomon writes, "There is one who speaks rashly, like the thrust of a sword, but the tongue of the wise brings healing." That is, there are people who speak in a blunt or harsh way, hurtful, offensive, unfiltered. They say things like, "I just speak the truth. I say what's on my mind. I'm an honest person." And some are even proud of this, saying, "I speak straight from the heart." But Solomon warns us, such words can wound like a sword. A person might feel they're just venting stress or frustration, but the one on the receiving end experiences it like a stabbing pain. Note that Solomon doesn't compare it to just any sword wound. He says, like sword thrusts, plural. That means repeated, painful strikes. But then he contrasts that with the tongue of the wise brings healing. A wise person knows how to speak in a way that heals. Like a good doctor, he doesn't just know the right medicine, but also the right dosage. If a doctor gives a patient 10 times the required amount, even if it's the right medicine, it could kill the patient. It's the same with words. Wisdom in speech means measuring your words carefully. For example, when correcting a child, you don't speak out just because you're angry. You need to pause and think, what's the issue I'm trying to fix? Why am I even speaking to them about this? If you want to say something to your spouse, are you expressing anger or trying to create understanding? If you're addressing a friend's behavior, ask yourself, what change am I hoping to see? Set a clear goal. Know what you want to remove or improve. Like a diamond cutter carefully polishing a gem, only removing what truly needs to go. Elsewhere, Solomon says, "Train a child according to his way, and even when he grows old, he will not depart from it." That verse holds the entire foundation of parenting. In our book on raising children, we explained in depth what it means according to his way, not your way. But for now, the most relevant part is the ending. When the education is given with care and wisdom, its impact lasts a lifetime. But what is most relevant to us now is the end of the verse. And even when he grows old, he will not depart from it. I once gave a lecture to a group of school teachers. This wasn't in a religious setting, just a regular public school that held monthly seminars on child education. They had invited me to speak about parenting and education from a Jewish perspective. During the session, I posed the question, you're all experienced educators. Some of you have been teaching for decades. In your opinion, what is the ultimate goal of education? Whenever someone does something, they have a goal in mind. So when you're educating a child, what are you aiming for? I'm not talking now about academic instruction. That's important, of course, but it's a separate discussion. I mean education in the broader sense, shaping character and behavior. What's the moment where you can look at a child and say, yes, we succeeded. This child is well educated. There was a long pause. Then one veteran teacher raised his hand and said, I think success in education means that the child is obedient. When you tell the child to do something and they follow instructions, that's a sign that they're well educated. I asked the room if they agreed. Most nodded. So I challenged them. Let's say a child only obeys because he's been threatened or pressured every day. And now, because of that, he does exactly what you say. According to your definition, that's a well-educated child. But here's the problem. What happens when you're not around? What happens when there's no teacher, no parent watching? That same child may do the complete opposite of everything you taught him. Why? Because the education never became part of him. It was imposed on him. You didn't raise a child. You trained him like you would train a dog. It's obedience, not internalization. The proof that real education hasn't happened. When you step away and the child discards everything you stood for, that's not success. Rabbi Shlomo Wolbe, of blessed memory, once gave a powerful analogy. A child is like a spring. The more you compress it, the more forcefully it will bounce back once it's released. The tighter you push, the farther he'll fly when he finally breaks free. That's not education, it's repression. So the conversation evolved. What is the real goal of education? I eventually shared with them the verse we started with. Train a child according to his way, and even when he grows old, he will not depart from it. That's the key. Not your way, but his way. Every child has a unique personality, temperament, and path. True education means understanding who that child is and guiding him in a way that suits his nature. And the goal? Even when he grows old, he will not depart from it. Old age, in this verse, symbolizes the point in life when parents and teachers are no longer present. Maybe they've passed away, or maybe they've simply stepped back. But the child is now an adult, alone, making his own choices. So the real test of education is this: when the child is behind the school building, where no teacher sees him, when he's at a friend's house with no adult supervision, when he's on his own, free to do as he pleases. How does he behave? If he chooses what you taught him, even when no one's watching, then you've succeeded. Why is this definition so important? Because every time we correct a child, whether we yell, criticize, or even punish, we must ask ourselves, am I building toward the goal of, even when he grows old, he will not depart from it? Or am I doing the exact opposite? Maybe the tone of my voice, my anger, the words I'm choosing, maybe they'll push the child away from everything I'm trying to teach. If so, what have I accomplished? Rabbi Wolbe writes in his book, Alei Shur, that sometimes you see a parent hitting their child violently, even cruelly. And when you ask the parent what they're doing, they'll say, "What do you mean? I'm the father. I'm educating my child." But Rabbi Wolbe urges us, be honest with yourself. Ask deep in your soul, are you really hitting him to educate? Or are you taking revenge because he didn't listen to you? Nobody wants to think of themselves that way. But it's worth asking, because if your goal was truly to educate, you wouldn't strike with such cruelty. Real education doesn't come from domination. It comes from patience, wisdom, empathy, and helping a child adopt values as their own. If a person were truly focused on educating a child and not just venting, they wouldn't unload all their frustration onto that child. They'd think before speaking, like a jeweler polishing a diamond. They'd know exactly where to trim, how much to take off, and which tools to use, carefully and delicately. That's the level of precision our speech should reflect. This is what King Solomon means when he says, "There is one who speaks rashly like the thrusts of a sword." The great sage, the Vilna Gaon, explains this verse in a profound way. He says, Solomon isn't just warning us that our words can hurt others, our spouse, our children, a friend, like a stabbing sword. He says the verse also hints at the heavenly consequence of such speech. When a person causes another emotional pain through harsh words, especially if it's unjust, they may be judged in heaven as if they physically stabbed the person. People often dismiss the harm they cause with words. "I didn't touch him," they say. "We argued," and then everyone moved on. But the Talmud teaches, when you shame someone publicly, it's like shedding blood, as if you murdered them. You might ask, murder just for embarrassing someone? The Talmud explains, when someone is humiliated, First their face turns red, then it goes pale. That physical reaction, blood rushing and then draining from the face, is considered by heaven as a form of spilled blood. That's how seriously speech is taken. There are even people who, upon seeing someone publicly humiliated, will rush over to that person and ask for a blessing. Why? Because in that moment the person is spiritually elevated. They held back, didn't retaliate, avoided a fight. Their restraint is so powerful that their prayers carry great weight in heaven. Of course, no one should ever deliberately hurt someone just to receive their blessing. That's missing the entire point. We all must learn to be sensitive to others. The more emotionally attuned a person is, the closer they are to what Solomon teaches next. But the tongue of the wise brings healing. Wise words can heal wounds. Not only is it possible to heal someone's heart and emotions with the right words, but the reward for doing so is immense. Imagine the reward for healing someone's physical body. How much more so for healing their soul? And pay attention to Solomon's specific wording. The tongue of the wise brings healing. He doesn't say the kind-hearted or the compassionate. He says the wise. Why? Because true healing through words requires wisdom. It's not just about being nice. It's about understanding. A wise person senses what the other is going through. They can enter the world of another's emotions. I saw this with my own eyes in great Torah leaders like Rabbi Volbe of blessed memory and Rabbi Aharon Lieb Steinman, who lived well into their 90s and beyond. When I spoke with them about education or parenting, I was struck by how deeply they could relate to children of all ages. You talk to them about a 3-year-old, and you could see it in their eyes. They became that 3-year-old. They were fully immersed in that mindset. Talk to them about a teenager, and they would connect instantly to that teenager's world, the emotions, the struggles, the fire of adolescence. That's the sign of greatness. The ability to step into someone else's shoes, feel what they feel, and respond accordingly, with clarity and precision. That's why Solomon says healing words come from the wise, because true wisdom means empathy. It means knowing not just what to say, but how, when, and why to say it. That's the kind of person who, even without a psychology degree, becomes a powerful source of healing, just through their words. A truly wise person is someone who lives with others emotionally, who genuinely wants what's best for them, who tries to step into their shoes and understand what they're going through. That, says King Solomon, is the kind of person whose words can heal. The tongue of the wise brings healing. On a deeper level, our sages explain that this verse also refers to the power and danger of lashon hara, negative speech or gossip. Earlier we spoke about the harm of speaking harshly to someone's face, words that cut like a sword. But here King Solomon is warning about something more subtle and, in some ways, more dangerous, speaking negatively about someone behind their back. As explained by Rabbeinu Yonah and the Vilna Gaon, when a person talks badly about someone, even if it's completely true, that's considered a serious offense in Jewish law, unless it's done for a clear and constructive purpose. This differs greatly from secular law, where defamation usually refers to falsehood. If someone proves in court that what they said was true, they are legally protected. But in Jewish law, even truth can be harmful and prohibited when spoken carelessly. So what does it mean to speak for a constructive purpose? Imagine your friend is considering dating someone for marriage. He tells you, she works with you. What can you tell me about her? You know she's generally kind and well-spoken, but she also has a serious temper, and when she gets angry, she loses all control. Can you just smile and say, she's great, to avoid gossiping? Number. In this case, not only are you allowed to tell him the truth, you must. It's a mitzvah, a moral obligation. but tell it properly, speak honestly and respectfully, sharing both her strengths and her challenges so that he can make an informed decision. The same applies in reverse. If someone is asking about a man and there's information that could seriously impact married life, it needs to be shared. Of course, that doesn't mean disclosing everything, only what's truly relevant, what affects the future. For instance, if someone was hospitalized for a few months years ago and it has no effect on their current health, there's no need to mention it. Don't plant fears where there's no real concern. But if there's something that truly impacts a person's ability to live peacefully with another, it must not be hidden. In fact, if someone directly asks you, how is this person when it comes to anger? You're not only permitted, you're obligated to be honest. Even if you need to be blunt to ensure the message is understood, that's allowed. Sometimes it's even necessary. Still, this kind of conversation requires great wisdom. When in doubt, one should seek halachic guidance to know what is permitted to say and what is forbidden. It's equally important to know this. Even when you hear something negative from someone, for a valid reason, you're not allowed to automatically believe it. You may take it seriously. You can investigate, but you may not accept it as fact without clear evidence. This balance is the heart of ethical speech. We must protect others, protect ourselves, and still protect the dignity of every person involved. Solomon teaches us that words can heal, but they can also destroy. Wisdom is knowing when to speak, how to speak, and when to hold back. You're allowed to avoid going into business with someone if you've heard troubling things about them. You can say to yourself, I'm concerned based on what I heard, so I'd rather not take the risk. But what you can't do is let those concerns become a certainty in your heart, labeling that person as a fraud or a liar in your mind, and looking down on them when you see them on the street. That's not allowed. You may suspect, but don't decide. Don't treat hearsay as divine truth. Just because someone told you something doesn't mean it's the absolute reality. This is one of the powerful benefits of a society that truly observes the laws of proper speech as outlined in Jewish law. When a community lives by those principles, the overall quality of life improves. Why? Because everyone knows. Even if I make a mistake, it won't automatically become public knowledge. People won't gossip about me. I won't be publicly shamed. Everyone has flaws. No one is perfect. Can anyone truly say they've never made a mistake? The verse says, there is no righteous person on earth who does only good and never sins. Even the greatest people sometimes stumble, whether in major ways or in subtle matters like missed opportunities for spiritual growth. So, when you see a flaw in someone else, why go and talk about it? What's the purpose? To lower their reputation, to stir up tension between people. Words like that create division. They harm relationships. King David says in Psalms chapter 120, I called to God in my distress, and he answered me. What distress is he talking about? He continues, deliver me, O Lord, from lying lips and a deceitful tongue. Then he turns to the slanderer, not physically, but with words. What will it give you? What will it add to you, deceitful tongue? In other words, what do you actually gain by speaking negatively about others, especially if it's false? He continues, it is like the sharp arrows of a warrior with burning coals. Just as Solomon said that harsh words are like sword thrusts, David compares them to arrows. Why? Because a sword wound requires close contact, but an arrow, you can hurt someone from far away. That's how gossip works. You say something quietly to someone else behind closed doors, but the impact of your words spreads far and wide. That person's reputation is damaged. People distance themselves from them. He's looked down upon. You've created division between hearts, maybe even destroyed friendships. How many stories start this way? Two close friends, until one hears, he said this about you. Maybe it's true, maybe not. But why repeat it? What good will it do? Maybe he just had a moment of frustration. Maybe he spoke without thinking. Why carry it on and light the fire? This is exactly what the term gossip or tale-bearing refers to. In Hebrew, the word rehilut, gossip, comes from rohel, a peddler. In ancient times, a peddler would go from house to house selling small goods, needles, thread, trinkets, carrying them in a box hanging around his neck. The gossip does the same, except instead of goods, he carries words. He picks up stories here, passes them on there, enjoying the reactions. But where does this urge come from? Why do people enjoy speaking about others with no benefit? It often stems from ego, from the need to feel superior. How so? Some people want to feel like they're better than everyone else, but they can't prove it by their own actions, so instead they tear others down. If I can lower everyone else, I'll stand tall by comparison. They don't elevate themselves. They just push others down until only they remain standing. But true greatness doesn't come from speaking about others. It comes from improving yourself. Gossip and slander stem from a negative place. They come from corrupted character traits, traits that can ruin a person's life and damage everyone around them. That's why King Solomon warns us so strongly about this behavior. In contrast, he says, "The tongue of the wise brings healing." A wise person pauses, evaluates the situation, and asks themselves, what can I say to bring healing to someone else's wounds? This week, I had the privilege of participating in the annual gathering of the Conference of European Rabbis. Every year, hundreds of rabbis from across Europe gather in a different city, and this year, the conference was held in Krakow, Poland. They invited me to speak at the event. After the conference concluded, the participants, including Israel's Sephardic chief rabbi, Rabbi Yitzhak Yosef, and the Ashkenazi chief rabbi, Rabbi Kalman Bar, visited Auschwitz, the infamous concentration and extermination camp. There we held a memorial ceremony. We lit candles and prayed together in that place of unspeakable horror. Our tour guide, as we approached the area where the Nazi war criminal Mengele carried out his horrific selections, sending people to life or death with a mere flick of the finger, shared stories from survivors. One of those stories was a powerful example of Solomon's words, "The tongue of the wise brings healing." One Holocaust survivor who later made it to Israel carried with him a deep, lifelong pain. He would often express to his family and friends, "I can't forgive myself. I killed my father in the Holocaust." People would ask, "What do you mean you killed him?" And he'd explain. Both he and his father were sick, starving, and near death. The boy was a teenager at the time, and his father, though still relatively young, was older than him. At one point, they had only a small piece of bread between them. His father told him, "You eat it." The boy replied, "No, you eat it." They argued for a long time, each insisting the other should eat. Finally, the son gave in and ate the bread. The next morning, his father didn't wake up, and for decades afterward, he lived with this unbearable guilt. "I should have let him eat it. I killed him," he'd say. People tried to comfort him. "You were younger. Your father wanted you to survive." But he couldn't accept any of it. His pain never eased. Eventually, he opened up to a Torah scholar, pouring out his heart. But the rabbi didn't rush to dismiss his feelings. He didn't throw comforting cliches at him. Instead, he asked questions. He gently gathered details. "What was your condition at the time? What was your father's condition? What exactly happened?" Once he had the full picture, the rabbi looked at him and said, "Based on everything you've told me, honestly, even if both of you had eaten the bread, it was such a small piece, and you were both in such critical condition that neither of you likely would have survived. But because you honored your father's requests, because you fulfilled the mitzvah of honoring your parent, that is why you survived. so that your days may be lengthened, as the verse says. The survivor said those words healed something inside him. From that moment, his life changed. He felt peace for the first time in years. "I'm not guilty," he said. That, he explained, is exactly what it means when Solomon says, "The tongue of the wise brings healing." It's not just about saying something comforting, it's about saying something true, thoughtful, and healing. We need to learn how to speak in ways that truly help others, not just toss out words that go in one ear and out the other. Look closely, think deeply, say something that reaches the heart and heals the pain. Even today, we hear about young people, or even older adults, carrying guilt from mistakes they made years ago. Some regret eating non-kosher food. Others speak of things they did during a trip abroad. The wound still burns inside them, and they can't forgive themselves. Sometimes when someone is deeply troubled and struggling with guilt, you try to comfort them by saying, "But you came back. You did teshuvah. You turned your life around. God has forgiven you. Your sin is no longer with you." But they still can't accept it. They say, "No, I did something unforgivable. I ate something that wasn't kosher. I made serious mistakes on that trip abroad. I can't undo that." And here's the key. Instead of debating or arguing with them, try telling them this. "Who told you that what you did was wrong?" You'll say, "It says so in the Torah. It's clearly forbidden." Yes, and the same Torah that says it's forbidden also says that if someone falls and sincerely returns, if they truly regret it, if they would never do it again, if they commit to change, then that sin is erased. That's what teshuvah really is in Judaism. Regret for the past. Real regret. If you could go back in time, you'd do anything to avoid making the same mistake. Commitment for the future. From now on, no matter what, you won't do it again. You make a clear, firm decision. Even if the world turns upside down, I will never repeat this. Confession. The Torah says, "They shall confess their sin." That doesn't mean going to a rabbi or priest. It means speaking directly to God as a child speaks to a parent. "Father in heaven, I failed. I made a mistake. I did this and that. I'm deeply sorry." It's personal, honest, from the heart. And then you begin again, a new page, a new self, the sin gone, the guilt lifted. Yes, some transgressions require more, like Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, to fully complete the process. But the core of teshuvah is what we just said. So you can't say to God, "I believe you when you say it's forbidden, but I don't believe you when you say I can be forgiven." The same God who said, "Don't do it," also said, "You can fix it." He even told you how to fix it. And when you follow that path, you're not the same person anymore. The old you, that was like a different lifetime, a different version of you. You've turned the page, you're clean, you're whole. So go forward with a clear conscience, with a peaceful soul. Believe God when He says, "You are pure again." When people hear this kind of honest, rational explanation, one that makes sense to the mind and speaks to the heart, that's what truly heals them. That's what King Solomon meant when he wrote, "There is one who speaks like the thrusts of a sword, but the tongue of the wise brings healing." Now, what about someone who says, "I've been this way for too long. I speak harshly to everyone, my spouse, my kids. This is just who I am. I can't change." But that's a lie we tell ourselves. The Torah says, you can rule over it. You can overcome your negative impulses. God says, yes, the temptation lies at your door, but you have the power to master it. Yes, we all fall into habits, whether it's anger, harsh speech, or even not observing traditions like Shabbat or putting on tefillin. People say, "This is just how I live. I've been doing it so long." But that doesn't mean you're stuck. Here's a simple analogy. Imagine someone needs to drive to San Francisco. They know they're supposed to take Highway 5 north, but by mistake they take Highway 5 south and keep driving for 2 hours. They're listening to music, not paying attention to signs. Suddenly, they see a sign, San Diego, 20 miles. They realize they've been driving the wrong way all along. What should they do? Say, well, I've come this far. I might as well just keep going all the way to Mexico. Of course not. You pull over. You turn around. You head in the right direction. Yes, you lost time. Yes, it's frustrating. But now you're on your way to the right place. And that's what teshuvah is. It's not too late. You can always turn around. Recalculating route. You made a wrong turn, so what do? You make a U-turn. Sure, you wasted 2 hours. And yes, it'll take more time now to get where you need to go. But if this isn't the place you live, then don't stay there. You recalculate. You correct your course. And you move forward toward your destination. The same is true in life. Even if years have passed and someone feels they've been headed the wrong way, there's still time. You can change. You can fix it. There's a well-known story about Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, the great 19th century Jewish ethicist. Late one night, he left the study hall in the small town of Salant, where he lived before the Holocaust. As he walked home, he noticed a faint flicker of light coming from the cobbler's shop. This was long before electricity, so a flickering light at that hour meant a candle, and in a town built mostly of wood, fire was a serious danger. He ran to warn the shoemaker, afraid the flame had been left unattended. But as he approached, he saw the door was slightly open. He peeked inside, and there sat the cobbler, hard at work, the candle nearly burned out. Rabbi Salanter was amazed. "It's 2 a.m, he said. "You're still working?" The shoemaker looked up and humbly replied, "As long as the candle is burning, there's still time to fix." Rabbi Salanter took that phrase to heart. The next morning, he entered the study hall, filled with 200 yeshiva students. He struck the table and said, "I learned something powerful from a simple cobbler last night. As long as the candle is burning, there's still time to fix. The Torah says, the soul of man is the candle of God. As long as we're alive, our candle is burning. We're still in this world, not in the next. And that means there's still time to repair. We can fix our character. We can correct our mistakes. We can change. We can grow. We can restore peace in our homes. Once a person dies, King Solomon writes in Ecclesiastes, whatever you are able to do it now. Because in the grave, where you're going, there is no action, no calculation, no knowledge, and no wisdom." What does that mean? No action. In this world we can perform mitzvot, spiritual deeds. We can light Shabbat candles, give charity, honor our parents, pray. In the next world there's no body, no physical ability to act. No calculation. This refers to sins. Here we can choose to not do the wrong thing. In the next world it's too late to restrain yourself. No knowledge and no wisdom. This refers to Torah study. Here we can learn, reflect, and grow in understanding. There we can only receive the reward for what we learned, no more. So if you're struggling in life, whether with family, relationships, self-control, or your spiritual direction, say to yourself, as long as my candle is burning, I can still change. Believe in yourself. God himself says, you shall rule over it. Yes, the evil inclination feels powerful. It comes with emotion, confusion, even intimidation. But God created you stronger than it. Yes, it may take time. You may fall. But step by step, one decision at a time, you will reach your goal. Let's end with a blessing. May these words of Torah be a merit for the success and safety of the entire people of Israel and all the soldiers of Israel, wherever they may be. And may everyone present, along with all those watching from afar, see their heartfelt prayers answered for good. Amen and amen.